right, let's testify, man. Oh God, you've done so much for me. I'm grateful and overwhelmed here at your feet. And I could stay here forever, Lord, but you call me to something more. And I hear you say that you have a plan to use every broken woman and man to display just how good you are. We are your living pieces of art. What good does it do to hide away when all of my scars are a picture of grace? All right. So I will testify of the power of God. Tell the world of the hope I have found. For my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, do you believe it? Has He done it for anyone else? I said, has He done it for anyone else? Cause the God that I serve, He's always at work. Has He done it for anyone else? So come on and testify of the power of God. Come on and tell the world of the hope we have found. For our body was broken, our hearts were made whole, and that's too good to keep to yourself. Come on and testify of the power of God. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify your voice. This is my. So I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify. Come on, take it out. Jesus, my champion, the victor of grace, the only one worthy of all of my praise. Yeah. So come on and testify. Oh, somebody lift Him high. Come on, testify of the power of God. I will tell the world of the hope I have found. Oh, for my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Sing that. Oh, my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, let's do that right now, Murfreesboro.
And good morning, everybody. Hope you are doing well. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I am feeling like absolute crap right now. So forgive me if I suddenly go into a coughing fit or something. I'm doing the best that I can with what I've got. But it's good to see you. Mercer first in the house after me. Justin is here. Stan Lee is here. Miss Moneypenny is here. Good to see you all. And anybody who is lurking or anybody who joins us later, welcome as well. So yeah, I'm just, man, Been having a nasty cough these last few days. Unfortunately, I managed to give it to the wife and kids. I'm assuming that I picked it up from somebody while I was driving Uber. Um, and it's kind of come and gone a little bit over the last couple of days. And I wish I could just take some time off and not have to deal with it, but that's not how life works. Life doesn't always give you time off when you need it. So I just got to keep going as best I can. Mercer says, I work for Section 31. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Mercer, that you work for such an incompetent organization as Section 31. Because, boy, that, yeah, don't even want to go there. I mean, Section 31 was so bad, it almost, it makes like The Last Jedi look good. You've not seen the movie Section 31? Well, then you shouldn't say you work for Section 31 until you've seen that movie, Mercer. Because, whew, boy. I mean, granted, I know we have different tastes, you and I, but I will tell you, this is not a matter of taste. Section 31 is objectively bad. I don't think there's much defending it. When is the Academy show coming out? I haven't heard anything as far as release dates. The only thing I know for sure is that, obviously season 3 of Strange New Worlds is coming out, I think, in July. Excuse me. Sorry, I'll probably do that a few times. But no, I have no idea if and when the Academy show is coming out, nor do I really. I mean, look, I will watch it when it comes out. I mean, I am a Trekkie through and through. But am I excited about it? Not at all. It takes place in the Discovery era, meaning the 32nd century or whatever that is. And quite frankly, that particular era of Trek just isn't interesting to me. Trust says, sorry to hear the bug is hanging on. Yeah, it is a tenacious little critter, whatever it is. I only assume that's no, the DS9 version. Well, the DS9 version of Section 31 is an interesting, villainous organization. Why we're talking about Section 31, I don't know, but whatever. If somebody has a theological question or something, please ask it. I'm sorry, I don't have a preset lesson for today. I just didn't have the energy to do anything. But the DS9 Section 31. Section 31 is portrayed as a antagonistic organization, a foil to the good people of Starfleet, and a horrifying idea to find out that Starfleet has this secret covert operations that is darn near evil. So, yeah. I have no desire to see it. Well, nor should you. It is really, really bad. Let's see. Everything is coming out in July. 3 movies. I won't be able to go. I'm sorry. I don't. I mean, yeah, I know Fantastic Four. What Superman? What's the other one? And thank you, Empty the Void, for subscribing. Appreciate it. No Boothby, no sale. Yeah, I don't. Well, I don't really care about Boothby. I mean, yeah, Boothby was a cute idea for the Picard era, but I mean, like, if they were going to do an Academy show in the TOS era, there wouldn't be a Boothby there. But do you really want them like recasting Boothby? And no. I have a theological question. I'm worried it may come off as offensive. Well, that's okay. You know what? if you're asking a genuine question, then I won't take it as offensive as long as just what's your question? Josh says 21st century is too far. I might as well be magic. A show in the post Dominion era would be nice. Post Dominion, like a Reconstructionism type show, could be interesting. Or honestly, I really dig in the Strange New Worlds vibes. I just wish they would just straight up call it a reboot of Trek and then move into the TOS era with, a reimagined version of Kirk and crew based on Strange New Worlds. I'd be perfectly fine with that. And then you could work your way into, the Lost year and stuff. Someone said that anyone who demands worship is unworthy of it. Thoughts? Okay, that is that's an objection I've heard many times, and I would say this: that would be true of any being that is not God, and that's the problem with a question like that, is that if any person, like if I demanded that you worship me, clearly I am not worthy of your worship, right? And this is true of every single human that exists, because we are all only human. We are all equals as far as intrinsically we have the same value. We are, you know, the there's nothing to elevate one of us above the other. And I'm getting to that. And as far as why is God the exception to that? And so God, by definition, now we're talking about God with a capital G, not the lowercase g God, because I would say this: I would say a lowercase g God would also not be worthy of worship. But if God, by definition, the uppercase G God, is the creator of us and everything around us, the universe itself is his creation. Now, some people don't like this, but I'm going to be honest about it. The if you were, let's say you are a computer programmer and you write a computer program, uh, and in this computer program you create all these little creatures that you then want to worship you. Because you know, does do you have the right to do that? And I would say absolutely. They're your creation. You can do pretty much anything you want with them. Now, what if you're able to create a free will algorithm that allows your computer program to act independently of what you want them to do? Now you have what you might call a game or a virtual reality type world or something like that, where you are trying to win the game, if you will, by convincing all your little programs to worship you. And are you going to, are you going to win that game or are you going to lose that game? You know, now, are you worthy of that? Well, it's your game. You can do anything you want. You can set the rules to whatever you want them to be. And so if you want the programs to have free will, or you want them to blindly follow you, or you can do anything you want with it. And at no point is that a violation, and nobody would even consider that to be a violation of, human rights, or a violation of, the rights of the programs, right? So why is it different if we are in fact the createes? We think it's different because it's us. We think that we are somehow elevated to the God level. That somehow, that because we know that we are sentient, sapient creatures, that means that God has no right to demand anything from us. But if we are created by God, and further, we are created by God for some specific purpose, it is absolutely within God's rights, so to speak, and to demand that we do whatever it is that purpose may be. And we may not like it. We may not think, we may consider or think it's unfair. But you know what? It is, in fact, his universe. And I really don't understand the hubris of people to say that, well, because I think that I'm a superior being, and therefore God has no right to demand anything of me. Now, compare that to the lowercase g gods, like, say, Apollo and Zeus and Thor and all those. These gods, for the most part, didn't create humanity for their specific purpose. They would be more along the lines of another sentient, sapient species in this universe that just happens to be more powerful than us. So now you're not talking about a creator who created something for a specific purpose. We're talking about one race of beings subjugating another into some kind of oppressive system akin to slavery. So is that the same thing? I don't think so. I hope that makes sense to you, Mercer. Just kind of off the top of my head, in my sickly mind as it is. Excuse me. God still has a personality, and his personality matters. Okay. And now that's an interesting statement, but I would say this. Number one, what would you describe God's personality as, and why does it matter? As sort of a new Black Mirror episode, guy programs Sims sort of game and they become sentient. Yeah, and the funny thing is, if you were a computer programmer and you managed to create some kind of independent, algorithmically controlled creatures in a game that could act independently of what you wanted them to do, would we instantly think that your computer program has rights? And if you want to go that route, does that mean that every time like if you play any game, any simulation, any program that runs independent, algorithmically controlled beings, when you turn off your computer, are you committing genocide? And I don't think that anybody would answer that as yes, no sane person at least. But that's because we understand the order of us being the creator over this virtual universe. We have no problem with that when we're in the superior position. We just don't like the idea that someone else may be above us. I'm glad my question didn't offend you. Well, the only time a question ever, I wouldn't. A genuine question very rarely, I think, is offensive unless the question is predicated on something that is indeed offensive. So, for example, why haven't you stopped beating your wife kind of question? Or, a question that precludes the idea of some kind of idiocy towards people, like, well, why is it that all these idiots believe in God or something like that? If you want to ask a genuine question, I don't care if you're a believer or not. I'm interested in what questions you may have. What I'm not interested in is disingenuous questions. Stan says you should be compelled to worship, not forced under duress. Well, the thing is that you're not compelled to worship, and you're not obviously forced to worship. God asks you, and the funny thing is, it's like when we think of worship, I think we're getting the wrong idea. And because honestly, let's see, I don't know what the let's see, trying to see if I can find what the word actually technically means. Okay, so the feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for a deity is the common, that's from the Oxford Dictionary. And let me see. Says worship means respectful devotion, loving, honoring, and obeying someone who deserves our highest regard. So, looking at that kind of a definition, you're never compelled by God to worship. You're not forced by God to worship. However, Christ specifically asks you to stop what you're doing in your life that's unproductive and follow Him. And when He says to follow Him, He means to imitate the way that He demonstrates that we should live our lives. And when you look at the way that Christ lived His life, yes, worship of the Father was a big part of Christ's life. But was that all that He did? Did He just sit around and worship God all day long? And the answer to that is no. He did things like, he spent a lot of his time out there helping people that were in need. And he focused a lot of his ministry on the idea of loving your fellow man. And remember, one thing that's really interesting, like when we talked about the commandments, the Ten Commandments, only three, was it three? I think three or four. I can't remember. I think it's three of the commandments are actually focused on God. The majority of the commandments are focused on how we treat our fellow man. God has never intended us to spend all of our time doing nothing but praying and worshiping God. That's never, and so I think that we can confuse the idea that God does feel that He is the only thing that should be worshiped with the idea that we think that that's all that we should do is worship God. Thoughts on the Superman trailer? I mean, it's all right. I'm a little mixed on it. I didn't really like the idea of Superman losing his cool with Lois. When he got angry about her line of questioning. I mean, I get that it seems like Gunn is trying to humanize Superman a bit. But honestly, Superman is not the kind of character that I think should be humanized. And Stan, that's actually an interesting point. Was Jesus giving reasons of worship or demanding it? I don't think Jesus was demanding it. Because I mean, it's Jesus talks about a lot about the idea that we should choose to worship God. Miss Moneypenny's going to church. Have a good one. Doesn't worship include activities like sacrifices? In the Old Testament specifically, absolutely. In the New Testament, honestly, there's not a lot of talk of sacrifice except that we sacrifice of ourselves personally. That is that we put and this is a big part of the Christian lifestyle, if you will, is that you put the needs of others ahead of yourself, that you put Christ above all, that your priorities are in such a way in that it is God, then others, then yourself. You know, so in that respect, we still have sacrifice in that we're supposed to self-sacrifice is considered the highest form of love. But things like the burnt offering and the food offering and the drink offering and stuff like that, that is specifically a Jewish ritual. And those offerings are basically rendered moot by the sacrifice of Christ himself, although some people do still practice them. Like, for example, there are Christians that still practice the Jewish traditions. Not, I don't know about the sacrifices, and that's the funny thing is that if you're one of these people, like I think Robert, I don't know if you're here right now, but Robert, I believe, is one of these folks that believes in, like, for example, celebrating the Jewish festivals. And so you should be celebrating Hanukkah and you should be celebrating Purim and stuff like that. If you believe in that, then you should be doing these sacrifices too, because at least in the Torah, like we've been reading in Exodus, these sacrifices are things that it specifically says are to go for all time through all generations. It doesn't say, by the way, you can stop at a certain period of time. So if you believe in following the Jewish tradition, I don't see a reason, at least from a scriptural standpoint, that you should stop. Now, I'm sure that in the writings of now I forget what it's called, but the Jewish writings. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm spacing it because I'm just feeling a little cloudy in the brain right now. But the great rabbis of old have probably come up with a million reasons why sacrifices are no longer necessary. And my understanding is a lot of that revolves around the fact that the temple itself was destroyed. But I don't know. It seems to me like sacrifices, if you are a Jew, you should still be practicing them unless you are a converted Christian. You can't just worship in prayer. He demands specific activities. Well, that's, again, a Jewish thing. Does Superman have a perfect moral compass? It depends on which version of Superman you're talking about. I think that the idea of Superman, and keep in mind that the creators of Superman were, in fact, both Jewish, and they were trying to create a what they believed the Messiah would be like. But if you look at the way that Superman is, he's supposed to have a perfect moral compass. And that's why the one thing that truly the one thing that would be difficult for Superman is a moral dilemma in which, like something like the trolley problem, right? Superman would have a very difficult time having to choose one evil over another. Do any modern religions still do any traditional sacrifices? I'm sure some of them do. Like in Christianity, typically the only modern sacrifice we still do is what we refer to as tithing. But in the modern sense, like if you look at tithing in the ancient world, it would mean that you would go out to your flock, and if you have 100 sheep, you would pick out the 10 best ones, because a tithe literally means a tenth. You would pick out the 10 best ones of your flock and take them and give them to the temple. That would be your tithe. And that's how the temple would, this is why, how the temple would pay for its operation and stuff. A tenth of all that you have would go to the temple as a tithe tax. In the modern world, that would translate to simply 10% of your income. Now, people argue about, is this a commandment that Christians do that? And I've heard good arguments on both sides of it. I tend to think that no, it is not truly a commandment. However, what the New Testament does show by example is that we should be generous to those in need, and that the church should not, the officers of the church, the clergy and those that support the clergy full time at the church, should be compensated for their time and duties and everything. And the church, of course, would, especially in the modern context, would need to have a location that is going to cost rent or a mortgage or property tax or electric bills and stuff like that. So the church does have an operational expense. And then the church itself has an obligation to help those, first within its own body and secondary in the greater community, as far as making sure that the needs of the individuals are taken care of. So if there is a member of the church who is literally starving through no fault of their own, the church should be able to provide them the food they need. If a person is about to get evicted from the house, the church should be able to either help them with their bills financially or get them into a place that they can afford or whatever. But the church can't do that without, in modern society, the church can't do that without some kind of monetary fund to work with. Or did Jesus sort of say stuff like that wasn't necessary anymore, like the chosen, the Jews, admonished the Romans form of sacrifice, leaving the dead animals to rot on the altar? Well, that was just a difference in how they did their sacrifices. Because the Romans, because with the Romans, they actually believed that the gods were supposed to, like, come down and consume the animal, which, in Jewish tradition, that's never been the case. And so they would just leave it there for their gods, and when the animal was rotting, then they would dispose of it and replace it with a fresh one. So that whenever Zeus got hungry, I guess, he could come down and get himself a snack. But there's nothing, I mean, like, Jesus didn't tell the Jews to stop, at least I'm trying to think. I don't think he specifically told them to stop the sacrificial system. However, moving forward, he also doesn't tell non-Jews to sacrifice in the way that the Jews did. You know. All right, I'm confused. In Chosen, it was Jews still doing sacrifice, but new Christians weren't required to perform. Yeah, there's no obligation for a convert to Christianity to do Jewish traditions, and in fact, that's been a big subject of discussion in the New Testament. So let me see if I can find that. Let's see if I can find it. If I'm just trying to see if I can find what I'm thinking of. That's not what I'm looking for. Blah, 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 blah. Let's see. But bear with me a second, guys. I know what I'm looking for. I just don't know exactly where it is. Let's see. God's will. Let's see. Let's see if that's what I'm looking for. Here we go. I think it's in Acts 15 is what I'm looking for. Let me. I figure it was probably Acts, but I couldn't remember exactly where. Um, yeah, so this is where a lot of this debate came from, as far as what a Christian is required to do in comparison with a Jew. And so this is a dispute that happened, and that's one thing I really like. The Book of Acts is a really interesting historical text because it takes place immediately after the crucifixion. So this is basically the foundation of the old church. So it says, some men came down from Judea and began to teach the brothers, unless you are circumcised according to custom prescribed by Moses, you cannot be saved. So these people are basically teaching that you have to follow all the Jewish traditions all the way back to the basic rite of circumcision, which I'm sure to most people does not sound particularly pleasant. But after Paul and Barnabas had engaged them in serious argument and debate, the church had arranged for Paul and Barnabas and some others to go up to the apostles and elders in Jerusalem concerning the controversy. So Paul, who was a Pharisee, and so remember that Paul was an absolute expert in the Jewish law. He knows that any self-respecting Jew must be circumcised, right? He understands that. And but he was arguing against the idea that new converts need to be circumcised. When they had been sent on the way of the church, they passed through both Phoenicia and Samaria, explaining in detail the conversation with the Gentiles, and they created great joy among the brothers. When they arrived in Jerusalem, they were welcomed by the church and the apostles and the elders, and reported all that God had done with them. But some of the believers from the party of the Pharisees stood up and said, it is necessary to circumcise them and to command them to keep the law of Moses. Remember, the law of Moses, if you've been following me on the weekday on the Exodus series, that's what we've been talking about. Is these various laws and regulations that God hands down as far as the sacrifices that we were talking about just now, as well as some specific legislative things as far as how to deal with certain circumstances. Then the apostles and the elders assembled to consider the matter. After there had been much debate, Peter stood up, and keep in mind, even though Paul was one of the wisest men of that era, Peter was the leader of the church at that time. Peter stood up and said to them, brothers, you are aware that in the early days, God made a choice among you that by mouth the Gentiles would hear the gospel message and believe, and God, who knows the heart, testified to them, giving the Holy Spirit just as he did to us. He made no distinction between us and them, cleansing their hearts by faith. Now then, why are you testing God by putting the yoke on the disciples' necks that neither our ancestors nor we have been able to bear? On the contrary, we believe we are saved through the grace of the Lord Jesus in the same way they are. Then the whole assembly fell silent and listened to Barnabas and Paul describing all the signs and wonders God had done through them among the Gentiles. After they stopped speaking, James responded, brothers, listen to me. Simeon has reported how God first intervened to take from the Gentiles a people for his name. And the words of the prophets agree with this, as it is written. And he quotes some old scripture. Therefore, in my judgment, we should not cause difficulties for those among the Gentiles who turn to God, but instead we should write to them to abstain from things polluted by idols, from sexual immorality, from eating anything that has been strangled, and from blood. For since ancient times Moses has had those who proclaim him in every city and every Sabbath day he has read aloud in the synagogue. So there's the bare minimum right there. So, and keep in mind, Paul actually even goes a little further than that and says that if you need to eat and the only meat available is meat that was sacrificed to an idol, then eat that because you need to eat. But basically what they're saying is idolatry, bad, right? And so you don't think, you don't, and so when he says abstain from things polluted by idols, I think he's talking about avoiding idolatry in general. Sexual immorality, obviously, that's something that Christians talk about a lot, but don't really seem to understand because Christians are very quick to point out that people in the LGBTQIAA plus community are terrible, horrible heathens, and then they turn a complete blind eye to straight people that are sleeping together but aren't married, so whatever. Which, there's no difference in sexual immorality is sexual immorality. And from eating things that have been strangled, and from blood. So you shouldn't be like consuming blood. Which, I'll admit there are some dishes made to this day in various parts of the world that use the blood of the animal as an ingredient. That's something that, as a Christian, if you know about such things, you should probably try to avoid it. However, what Christ himself says about when it comes to consuming foods and stuff is that it's not what goes into your body that makes you corrupt. It's what comes out of your body that makes you corrupt. And he's not talking about, going to the bathroom. He's talking about your words, your attitude, all that. That is what makes you a corrupt person, not whether or not you eat something with the wrong ingredients. And so, but notice things like sacrifice, things like circumcision, stuff like that, and even celebrating the festivals, not included in there. There's no need to burden people with all that stuff. Now, all that being said, if you feel like, and this is where I commend people like Robert, if you're listening, Robert, I hope you are, but if you're listening, certainly not trying to attack you. But I commend people like that in that if, for example, celebrating Purim or Hanukkah or whatever makes you feel closer to God, if you feel that making sure that you eat a kosher diet makes you feel closer to God, then by all means do so. That is a matter of what the fancy word in religious terms that we use for that is called conviction. If God has convicted you of something, it doesn't mean conviction like a criminal conviction. What it means is that if God has put on your heart that you need to do X, whatever X may be. So for some people, like I'll tell you, with Pastor Corey, the pastor of our church, he doesn't drink alcohol. Now, he fully admits, and he said many times from the pulpit, there is nothing about drinking alcohol specifically that is considered sinful. Heck, Jesus was very well known to enjoy wine. Drunkenness is considered sinful, but drinking alcohol is definitely not. However, Corey himself does not drink alcohol because he has a personal conviction about it. He was definitely a very, very heavy drinker in his youth, and he decided that it was a very bad idea for him to drink. So he doesn't at all, and that's perfectly okay. What would not be okay is if he then turned around and said, now you can't drink alcohol, because that's his personal conviction. And so you have to be very careful about that. For some people, it might be a particular type of music that you find deeply disturbing. You know, like say, like I'll tell you, for like I don't have a problem with it per se, but I'm not the biggest fan of. I don't know what the name of it is exactly. I'm sure my wife does, but it's the kind of like I don't want to say it's not like screamo, but it's more like a very guttural, uh, screaming type of music. So like you hear a loud, crunchy guitar, and the person's like rah, 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 you know, and you barely understand what they're saying, and they just sound angry to me, and I don't particularly like that. So you know, I may abstain from it because I think there's something wrong with that. But at the same time, I have absolutely no right to point the finger at others and say, "Oh, you can't." Like you know, my wife likes that stuff, and so for I can't tell her, "Hey, you shouldn't listen to that," because as long as it doesn't lead her in the wrong direction, that's perfectly okay. No full English breakfast? Absolutely not. Not according to Peter. I always thought black sausage seemed weird anyway. Yeah, I don't understand some of that stuff, but hey, you know, in the English, they got some weird recipes. All right, so that was a very long-winded, drawn-out thing. Anything else? You guys are being really quiet today. It's kind of strange. So you know, I know that I'm not feeling that great, but you know, you got to talk to me, or else I'm just going to wrap it up. You know, unless you guys just don't like talking to me today, then in which case, fine. Yes, string. She keeps running up and scratching my leg and then running away. And it's like, she's just a silly little rat. Anything, guys? No? All right. Stan says, I feel like I'm monopolizing. Well, you're not monopolizing the chat because nobody else is saying anything. You know, I understand sometimes people don't, they're, you know, either embarrassed or they just don't want to say anything, or maybe they just think I'm a big old jerk. I don't know. But, you know, I encourage you, if you're listening to this and you have any kind of question, please ask. Even if you think it's a stupid question, you should ask. Interesting how many Christians have always singled out types of music as being satanic. Well, I'll be honest, that in some ways comes from there's a grain of truth to it. If you there are there's definitely an interesting relationship between a lot of very popular songs and Aleister was his name, Aleister Crowley, and some of his writings about Satanism and stuff. And it's disturbing. Some of it is really disturbing. Keep in mind, what's the first rule of Satanism is to do whatever you want. And what is rock and roll all about? Doing whatever you want. And so they kind of go hand in hand. However, that being said, and by the way, a lot of people don't realize that even the term rock and roll, people just think, oh, that's just a genre of music, right? Means basically that you have usually a four-man band with like drum, guitar, bass, lead. You know, that's usually what most people think is rock and roll. Rock and roll is actually a euphemism for sex. That the if you look at the oldest songs, that's why like many of the songs would say things like "I want to rock you." That's the rock was a substitution for another four-letter word. And a lot of people didn't realize that. So rock and roll, in a very real sense, was very much focused on sexual immorality, rebelling against cultural norms, and doing whatever you want to do. That being said, do I think that if you listen to rock around the clock, that you're going to become a satanic sex maniac? No. However, if you are sensitive to this kind of thing, you should probably abstain from it. Trustin says, I like the fact that arguments and disagreements between the apostles and disciples were included in the book of Acts. It gives weight and authenticity. I agree. I think it's actually very interesting to see how some of the disagreements, first of all, what those disagreements were and how they ended up being resolved. And notice that even though Peter and Paul disagreed on subjects like what we were just reading about, and Paul went on to write things. Paul wrote more of the New Testament than any other single author. And if you read Paul's writings about what is permissible, basically the whole idea of Christianity is, remember, the old saying Christianity isn't a religion. Paul basically says, yeah, there's no restrictions. You can do literally anything, but not everything you do is beneficial. So you need to do that which is beneficial to your spiritual health. And you shouldn't be purposefully sinning just because you know that you are forgiven of all your sins. And Paul writes about that in great length. Peter was a little more legalistic than that. But Peter grew up in a Jewish household, and so he would. And he was a little. It's kind of funny because even though Paul was a scholar in Jewish law, Peter, I think, was just more of a lay traditionalist. Mercer's going in for surgery soon. I hope that it goes well. I gotta admit, surgery doesn't bother me anymore. Like, the first time I had surgery, it scared the crap out of me. Now it's like, oh, surgery, okay, cool, win. Because I gotta admit, if you gotta go, and because sooner or later we're all gonna die, and dying on the operating table seems like a pretty good way to go because you sit there, they put the gas in you, you relax, you're out, and then you wake up in the recovery room. So if something goes horribly wrong, you die on the operating table, well, you're not going to feel any pain. Let's see. I had an argument with my dad about disciples versus apostles. I was wrong. For some reason, I thought it was the 12 disciples. A lot of people say the 12 disciples. It's the 12 apostles. The apostolic ministry is specifically those who have had direct contact with Christ. And so there was the original 12, and then there was, I can't remember the name of the guy that replaced Judas, but then was subsequently stoned to death, and then there was Paul. So those 14 individuals are the only ones that could truly be called apostles. Today, if somebody calls themselves an apostle, then they are either A, misinformed as to what apostle actually means, or B, dangerous. It tends to be focused on sex and not the married kind. That is very true. Like in Sinners, the music was a reason to do lots of rubbing up against it. Well, and that's the thing is that rock and roll music in particular, but music in general has been used as a way to try and, do things that society viewed down on. And generally speaking, I don't think there's any harm in dancing. But yeah, if you look at the kind of hypersexualized dancing that some people do, yeah, there's a problem there. Dirty dancing like the lambada, that's the forbidden dance. I've never seen that. Let's see. March says the July 1st is the surgery and the rest of summer is recovery. That's a long. I don't remember. I know you said, Mercer, but what are you having done? Because I know you said you're not going to be able to see Superman, but you're not going to be able to get out at all in those few weeks after. I mean, I know something like after my. I'm trying to remember. I think it was my colon surgery. That was the worst one. I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks after the surgery, and sure, the last thing I wanted to do was go out and see a movie for at least a month after that. Stan says, I was scared of the idea of being anesthetized. I was at first, but honestly, like I said, it's really a very pleasant experience. Especially if like the last time was actually the best for me. And sorry, the battery in my back has run out, so I'm got to put the charger on. The last time was the best because it was at a Catholic hospital, St. Thomas, and the nurse, that was the anesthesiologist nurse that was at the table. She asked my permission to pray with me, and since she was simultaneously holding my hand and praying with me, and at the same time her other hand was on the controls for the gas, she had perfect control over my level of consciousness. And so just as she said amen, I was out. And then the next thing I know, I'm waking up in the recovery room. So that was awesome. Let's see. Up in Canada really sucks. Yeah, it would definitely suck to miss summer in Canada. All 3 weeks of it. Let's see. Last time I broke a bone was early in summer. I was stuck in a cast all night. That sucks. Oh, you're having kidney removed. Okay. And they say 6 weeks to 2 months for recovery. That sucks. Well, on the bright side, Mercer, hope you have Max because, Superman will come out on Max. And of course, if you have Disney Plus, you can watch Fantastic Four. Let's see. And so you have cancer in your kidney, and so that's why they're removing it. Well, I hope they get it all then. That's the important thing. And nice thing about kidneys is God was nice enough to give you a spare. So that's always a good thing. Let's see. Yeah, it's and if you have any, like for me with the cancer that I had, I was incredibly fortunate in that they removed it without even knowing it. Because in my case, the cancer was in my appendix, and my appendix became inflamed, and they found the cancer after they removed the appendix. Because usually, anytime they remove something from your body, they usually send whatever tissue it is that they remove to the labs to be analyzed. And in the case of my appendix, when they sent it to the lab found cancer in it. So, yeah, I was very lucky. Godson is in the house, says, here we go. How you doing, Godson? So, on the bright side, Mercer, during your recovery, you can watch Strange New Worlds. So there's that. And of course, you can always join my live streams, and you can enjoy that because I know how much you love arguing with me. Reading ahead in Exodus, does society regularly carry out the punishments? Actually, it's funny. No, you don't see a lot of examples of that. And there's not a lot of recorded historical examples of people, like you're saying, being executed for doing work on the Sabbath. Or, for example, doing... it says to stone to death. At one point, it says stone to death disobedient children, which people love to lambaste Christians because we believe in, and we believe in killing our kids. Which, granted, on the one hand, yeah, killing your kids sounds good sometimes, but you very rarely actually, I don't know if there's a single documented case of children actually being executed for being unruly. That being said, I think that it's because we forget that the whole point of the sacrificial system is to atone for one's sins. And so if, in fact, you are, you're doing your annual sacrifices and stuff, then even if you do something that may warrant death, if you've done the whole term scapegoat is the idea that the goat is paying the price for you. Christ is the ultimate scapegoat in that Christ paid the price for all of us. Let's see. And Mer says, I'm starting to like K2SO. I'm not sure what you mean. It's a commandment from God, but still seems a bit harsh. What, the death for working on the Sabbath? Yeah. Michael had a cane up his butt because he's old and mad. No, I put a cane up other people's butts because I'm old and got mad at them. Bill, good to see you. Says my daughter has thyroid cancer, scheduled for surgery. She's an individual with intellectual disabilities, and she's very scared. Prayers are appreciated. Absolutely, Bill. And I gotta say, it's tough because I don't know how severe her intellectual disability is. So she may not understand the whole thing about being anesthetized and all that. But really, it's just, I mean, and the thing to get her to try to understand is it's just you're taking a nap, and when you wake up, you're going to have a little bit of a sore spot where they did the work on you. And thyroid, I will tell. I've had my thyroid removed. That is not a particularly invasive surgery. It's actually a fairly easy one to deal with. So, of all the, and I actually had my thyroid removed because I have it. There was I can't remember which node it was, but one of them was inflamed, which can be a symptom of it being precancerous. And while the test came back negative, based on my prior history with cancer and all that, we chose to have it removed anyway. Let me see, bringing up my prayer list to make sure that I get both. Let's see, I don't think I have you on there yet, Mercer. No, I do not. So, let me add, first of all, Mercer is getting kidney removed on July 1st. And Bill, when is your daughter getting her thyroid removed? And also put cancer on this one too. All right. There. If you like K2SO, you should. Oh, Resident Alien is a hilarious show. I'd say this: it's really the first season of it is absolute gold. Second season's okay, but the first season is so good. And I don't. I'm trying to remember. I watch it on Netflix, so I know the most recent season. I don't think has dropped yet. Let's see. May 19th. Okay. It said maybe 19th, but then, so that is tomorrow, yes. So, absolutely. So, I'm sure she's very stressed out. But yeah, I would try to get her to understand she's just going to be taking a nap, and when she wakes up, they'll be all done. Let's see. Figure the worst part might be the recovery. Doesn't thyroid control things like appetite, so suddenly she's going to be hungry all the time? Well, actually, I'll be honest. After my thyroid, I don't feel significantly different. Now, I do have the only major thing is I have to take this stuff. And this is actually called Synthroid. And I'm sure your daughter will probably be getting a prescription for this if she hasn't already, Bill. And Synthroid is just it's a artificial hormone to replace the hormones that your thyroid normally puts out to regulate appetite and all that. But I don't feel a significant difference, to be honest. And I'll also tell you good news on the Synthroid, and you can tell your daughter this. This stuff is like candy. It's like this is the best pill of all the pills I have to take. This is the best one because I can literally pop these in my mouth and chew them up because they just taste like candy. So it's not a difficult pill to take. So the fact that she'll probably have to take that for the rest of her life, not a big deal. Resident Alien is also a graphic novel. Yeah, I've heard that. I've never read it, but I have heard that. Yep, she got that. So, yes, it's good stuff. Mercer says, thinking of, yeah, I don't, unfortunately for you, don't lose your other kidney because then you got to go dialysis, which, not fun. And Stan says, not a hard pill to swallow. Haha. No, not at all. It's bad a joke. And they're not big either. I mean, like, see, they're it's a tiny little pink pill. They also, like, the original ones that I took were blue, is a slightly different dosage, but, and yeah, just tastes like basic sugary candy. Godson says, when I look at both of channel other, when I look your both of channel other channels, they don't show up. You've got to link them in chat. Well, I'm not, they're totally different subject matter. So, I will definitely, once I get some more stuff on there, I will, start linking it more often, but, I don't feel right about using this channel to pimp the other channel or vice versa because the subject matter is so different. Yeah, nerd fights can be a tricky one to find because it's the smallest of them. The Salty Plus channel is the one I'm going to be focusing most of my effort on until Mr. Know-It-All is back into full swing. And yeah, but yeah, for nerd fights, you put into the search bar because, that's why, like, you have these at names, right? So at nerd fighting is the nerd fights handle. So if you put in the at sign nerd fighting, all one word, you will find it. And then for the other one, it's at Salty Plus, not the plus symbol, but PLUS. If you write that out, then it'll take you right to that one. And yeah, Stan put the nerd fighting one in the chat. Thank you, Stan. Trust says, just started the book of Deuteronomy. It's amazing how you can see the foundations and principles of the Western world throughout the. Oh yeah, I mean, like a lot of people, just are going through the what we've been doing with Exodus. There's so much there that you can see that, like, what the foundation of even like the American judicial system is clear as a bell in Exodus. That's why it's like when there was that one courthouse, I don't remember, it was like in Georgia or something. That one courthouse in Georgia that had a monument to the Ten Commandments in front of it, and some group sued because they felt that it violated the anti-establishment clause of the First Amendment, so they had to remove the statue. But honestly, it was not a tribute to religion per se. It was a tribute to the first recorded law. So, and Laura in the house says the Apomatrix, that might be it. I don't remember exactly where it was. But I remember, man, everybody was making a big deal about it being a violation of First Amendment. Let me see if that brings up. The Appomattox Ten Commandments is a phrase that combines. No, Appomattox Courthouse in the biblical Ten Commandments is not historically accurate, relevant term. Okay. No, that's not. This is a specific location. I think it was in Georgia, but I'm not sure. Let's see. Uh, I'm find. Let's see. In several cases, Ten Commandment monuments have been removed from courthouse access. This happened more than once, or other government buildings due to legal challenges based on First Amendment Establishment Clause, which prohibits the government from establishing a religion. But and the interesting thing, and this is where I disagree with those lawsuits. So it says the lawsuits argue that the displays constitute the government endorsement of religion. There's nothing about the Establishment Clause that says that the government cannot endorse a religion. Only that the government you cannot have a federal religion. So the federal government can't say, okay, we are like, as much as like some people in the Trump administration might like to, the federal government can't do say Christianity is now the official religion of the United States. That's not legal. Nor can you make it a requirement that you be part of a specific religion. You can't say that you have to be a Christian to be a citizen of the United States. And this is a big one. You also cannot prevent the free exercise of a religion as long as they're not violating some other law. So, for example, you cannot stop someone from being a Muslim or Jew or anything else just because you don't like it. Now, if you want to say, for example, that animal sacrifice, let's say, would be abuse of animals. Well, we slaughter livestock all the time, so I would actually think there's a good argument to be made there. But if you want to make an argument about, say, if there was a human sacrifice in your religion, well, that would be homicide, which is illegal, and so you would have a clear-cut case to stop them. However, as far as just because someone's religion may be opposed to what you believe, that doesn't matter. And in fact, that's one of the problems I have with I can't remember what her name was, but some girl who was in the United States on a student visa, and she was deported because she was in support of Palestine, but she was a Muslim, and that informed her position on that. And honestly, while I may disagree with her on her position on Palestine, she has every right to hold that position. And you can't deport someone just because they hold a religious conviction that you oppose. They're doing it, but you're not supposed to be able to do that. Yeah, we like to think we're so secular. Well, things like our courthouse are modeled very closely to biblical law. Yeah, very much so. Our courts are such an interesting reflection of the Judeo-Christian model. It's ridiculous. And you and Michael should box for $1 million. I would absolutely get in the ring with Laura Reloaded for $1 million. If you want to do the fundraising on that, Godson, I will 100% get into a boxing ring and fight Laura Reloaded. I won't even hold back. Granted, he'll probably still kick my butt because he's younger and doesn't have MS. But I will not hold back. I will do everything I can to knock that son of a out. And he would have permission to do the same for $1 million. Absolutely. Robert, good to see you. I was talking about you a little while ago. Says, good to see you. Good to see you as well, my friend. Unconfirmed that Danny DeVito passed. Okay. Well, this is not the Celebrity Death Channel. That would be sad, I suppose. I'm not the biggest Danny DeVito. He's 80 years old. I didn't realize he was that old. So, yeah, I'm not seeing anything on there when I look for him. Yeah, when I do a quick search for Danny DeVito, I don't see anything about him passing away. Just so you know, I mean, I just searched Danny DeVito, and there's nothing about his death. And at least according to Google, he is still alive at 80 years old and 4'10". Let's see. Example on a person from female from a Muslim country gets student visa, but there's nothing but prostitution. She says herself up a nice apartment. Wait. For example, what's on a person from a female from a Muslim country get a student visa, but there's nothing but prostitution. She says herself up a nice apartment for should she be deported. Youngster, I'm missing something there. Maybe slow down and retype that so that I can understand it, because you're saying, like, if a female Muslim gets a student visa, and are you saying she's like practicing prostitution, or she just lives in a place where there's a lot of prostitution? Because she just happens to live in an area that has a lot of prostitution, that means nothing. If she is actually convicted of solicitation, then they might have grounds to revoke her visa. So he definitely won't be playing Wolverine. Well, he's way too old to play Wolverine. Although, in his prime, Danny DeVito would have made a great Wolverine. Excuse me. Maybe you should finally watch Always Sunny. I've never watched Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It doesn't appeal to me, to be honest with you. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Danny DeVito's a bad actor. It's just that, raunch comedy just never really appealed to me that much. Be more fun to see if you had a boxing match against Kermit. You mean Kermit that's here from time to time? I'd kick his little butt. Nothing confirmed yet. Saw something on social media, 10 minutes old. Well, from whom? Is it from Danny DeVito's actual account, or is it just some random person saying Danny DeVito's dead? Because people do that all the time, and I find it in very poor taste that people do that kind of thing. But, whatever. Truck viewer in the house says hi. Good to see you, buddy. How about let's find a watch the guy Warwick Davis and Danny DeVito in a boxing match. It's funny to be a midget fight. Well, I mean, if you're trying to be, I know you're just trying to be silly about it, but I mean, Warwick Davis, Danny DeVito would stomp him, because remember, Danny DeVito is pretty big. I don't even know if he qualifies as having dwarfism. What if a woman from a Muslim country guy stood visa and she used it for prostitution instead of nice part? That should be deported. So if you're saying if a woman was here on a student visa, and while she was here, she engaged in prostitution, if she was arrested, tried, and convicted, remember, just being accused of it doesn't mean, and I'm sorry to people that don't believe in due process, sorry. If you, just being accused of it means nothing. You have to be tried and convicted. If you are convicted of solicitation, then you would have to go into a hearing for whether or not her student visa should be revoked. And if her student visa is revoked, then you deport her, or well, she'd probably voluntarily leave at that point. Any nerd fights on the horizon? Working on it. Mr. Know-It-All has been, he went through a lot of stuff there for a while. He's trying to pick up the pieces right now. Hopefully we'll get something going soon. You say, we need a final Andor discussion. I don't even want to talk about Andor. I mean, it's so depressing to me. because I mean, if you do a quick search, like, look, I'll do it right now, unscripted. Let's do this. So switch screens. So you can see on this screen is YouTube, obviously this very stream. So in the YouTube search bar, I'm now typing in Andor with nothing else, just Andor. Okay, Critical Drinker. Andor finally got me. He loves it. Eckert's Ladder, absolute masterpiece. Right? Star Wars here. I'm not covering Andor anymore. Okay, don't know why. Bombastic, watching Rogue One is so different after Andor. Screen Crush, Andor Season 2, blah, 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 breakdown. Andor finale breakdown. Andor Season 2 is an unprecedented masterpiece. How Andor changed Rogue One forever. This scene helps explain Rogue One. Andor Luthen Reels, not monologue. Let's see, that's how Rogue One. 10 biggest moments from Andor Season 2 is completely unforgivable. I think he's actually saying something he likes, but she was just so horrible. So basically, everybody's just gushing about how Andor is the greatest thing. Some people are going so far as to suggest that Andor is the best story ever told in Star Wars canon, period. And I certainly would not argue that. I don't think that Andor is badly produced. I think it's beautiful. I think it's well acted, for the most well directed. The production design is gorgeous. From the very first frame to the very last, it's probably the best looking Star Wars in all of Star Wars canon. I won't even deny any of that. But story-wise, there isn't one. That's my problem. Everybody's talking about how it's the greatest thing ever as far as story, and there's no freaking story. It's a series of, events that kind of sort of happen, but there's no story, there's no evolution, there's no overarching theme. It's just things that happen. Man, sorry. And it drives me batty that people are acting like it's so good. Andor's entire arc is nothing. That's his arc. Nothing. It's kind of funny because there is a great story hiding, and this is something that I plan on talking. And Mr. Know-It-All knows I feel this way, by the way, and he does agree with me on this one point. There is a great story hiding in Andor that didn't get told. We got hints of it throughout throughout Andor, particularly in season 2, but we just got hints of it, and that is this should have been Cyril's story, not Andor's. Cyril is the most compelling character in the entire show. He doesn't get enough time. But yeah. Lee says, during a check on my gallbladder, they found cancer in my kidney. It's small and they can be taken out laparoscopically. Thank God it was discovered. Well, I am very glad that it was discovered then. And especially if it's that small, they can just pop it out like without having to remove your kidney like what Mercer's going to have to go through. That's awesome. Finally getting some gear porn in a show again. Well, except that here's the problem. Like Andor Season 2. Tell me about all the great spaceships. Oh yeah, there aren't any. You get that TIE interceptor at the beginning of Season 2, which was really cool to look at. And it's like, oh, look, he's going on this big caper to steal the TIE interceptor. That's going to be really important, except that, nope, we never see it again. It means nothing. That's the entire show means nothing. Spider-Man versus Black Panther. Well, depends on which version of Spider-Man and Black Panther. If you're talking about the MCU version, that's a tough one because vibranium is essentially magic in the MCU. And so Black Panther is, and it doesn't matter if you're talking about Shuri or T'Challa at this point. Either one of them physically enhanced, strength level probably close to, if not equal to, Spider-Man's. And but then you have the indestructible armor of vibranium, which is really what makes all the difference. Because Spider-Man has no way to and the claws can cut through the webbing, so it'd be very difficult to restrain Black Panther. And the claws would tear right into Peter Parker's flesh. So I think I would probably have to give it to Black Panther. Putting something in the water. Yeah, I think so. Everybody's getting cancer. It's like, man, that's not good. Mr. Know-It-All loved Andor. Oh, yeah, he absolutely loved it. He thought that it was like super duper awesome. And yeah, I don't. I think that Andor was a big old nothing burger. And by the way, I feel that way about Rogue One as well. And people say, yeah, but Darth Vader at the end of Rogue One was so freaking awesome. Yes, that's 100% true. But an awesome shot of Darth Vader doesn't make an awesome movie, right? There's no story there. It's like, keep in mind. So, what was Rogue One? Rogue One was a 2-hour presentation to tell us what happened in the opening sentence of the original Star Wars, right? So, like, if we go back to, let me bring it up here, since you guys brought it up. We're just gonna go there. Let's go to plus Star Wars Saga, and all right. I really hate calling it A New Hope, but that's what we'll call it because that's what they call it for whatever reason. All right. All right. Rewinding a little bit. All right. So let me switch screens and stop screen share and screen share window, blah, blah, blah. All right. All right. So Star Wars. Stop, pause it right there. So, it is a period of civil war. Rebel spaceships striking from a hidden base have won their first victory against the evil galactic empire. During the battle, rebel spies managed to steal secret plans to the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star, an armored space station with enough power to destroy an entire planet. All right. Rogue One is just a 2-hour version of that. That's all it is, right? Andor, for all its glory, is just the backstory on primarily one, but a couple of the characters from Rogue One. So Andor is an extension of that. There's nothing there. There's no new information. There's nothing about, when you come out of Andor, everybody goes, oh, this changes it forever. No, it doesn't. It just makes it dirtier and grimier, which I don't particularly like. And I know that some people think, oh, Star Wars should be dirty and gritty and nasty, and, because people have to do bad things in order to, get the rebellion going and stuff. And it's like, no, they don't. I mean, yeah, in real life, sure they do. But this isn't real life. This is space wizards. So I don't need to see, and by the way, Andor went from a ruthless killer to a ruthless killer. That's his entire arc. He murders a bunch of people in the Andor series, and then we open up Rogue One with him murdering someone else. Good job. He's still a murderer. Trek Viewer says, did you see Strange New World Season 3 is going to debut July 17th? Yes, very much looking forward to it. 2 months from now, very much looking forward to it. Let's see. Who is the best realistic biblical Christian movie of all time? The Last Temptation of Christ. Wow. Last Temptation of Christ would probably be at the bottom of that list. Jesus Christ Superstar. Didn't even know the AK-47 was invented back then. Wow. Let's see. It's funny. It seems like they do what they're doing for me a lot. They use a needle that freezes and heats and sucks it out. It's like it's an outpatient surgery. Oh, you're talking about the removal of that. So you have like a tiny little tumor that they're pulling out. Then there is a U-wing fighter in Andor. So what? And that's my whole thing. So what? Does it mean anything? Does it add to the Star Wars lore? Ooh, we got to see a U-wing. Remind me to get excited. I like the secret communication devices they had to put together in Cassian sniper rifle with like 24 parts to put it together. Sniper better not be in a hurry. Would have been cool if it covered how they acquired the X-Wings. Well, they kind of just hinted on the Saul Guerrero was basically an illegal arms dealer. Godson says, what is your army? Mine are bears. Okay, well, then I'll take... We're going to have bears, huh? Well, you're saying we have to have terrestrial creatures? Because, it seems like you got bears is a pretty good one. But, so I'll take silverback gorillas. Lee says 2.8 centimeter tumor. All right, it's centimeter or millimeter? If they're moving the way they're talking about, it sounds more like it should be like 2.8 millimeter, but I'm not an expert on tumors. And Luthen teaching a little girl how to set off IEDs in public courtyards. Yeah. Well, and the thing is, and I know Mr. Know-It-All hates that I talk about this, but the problem is it's just true. Andor and shows like Andor show that the Empire did nothing wrong. If you're to take Andor's actual canon, then the Empire did absolutely nothing wrong. They simply had to crack down on a rising terrorist movement, and they did what they had to do. Daniel says, remind Salty to get excited. Yes, I do that sometimes. You got a metric. Actually, all cancer is metric. What if you found Bigfoot? If I found Bigfoot, then I'd say, well, we'll see if Bigfoot is more powerful than a silverback, and then I'd switch to Bigfoot. Let's see. The two Captain Pikes versus each other. Who wins? A young Jeffrey Hunter was the John Wayne movie... was in the John Wayne movie, The Searchers. Yeah, so Jeffrey Hunter Pike versus the Anson Mount Pike. Well, physically, I would say that they're very similarly matched. I wouldn't give a very strong, because they're both, obviously they're both humans. They both had their strong points, their weak points. So, and so I would have to go with hair, and Anson Mount clearly wins on hair. And Lee says centimeter, about an inch. Wow, that's a pretty big tumor. Mugatu versus Wookiee. Well, the Mugatu has the advantage of poisoned claws. The Wookiee would seem to have definite height, reach advantage, and based on descriptions and what little we've gotten of Chewbacca in action, Wookiees would appear to have something of a physical edge, because the Mugatu didn't seem to have significantly more than human level strength. But the Mugatu's biggest edge is the fact that its claws are in fact poisonous. Or bite. I don't remember if maybe it was just a bite. I can't remember, was it a scratch or was it a bite that Kirk got? But whatever. So, I would say in a straight up brawl, the Wookiee probably wins. But if the Mugatu gets a bite in on the Wookiee, then the Wookiee will die anyway. And can Salty make it through the entire Bible without getting a haircut? Probably. Although, we start reading about Samson, that'll be tough. Who wins in a fight, duck versus chicken? Oh, well, you see, as a person who has raised both, I would say the chicken definitely has the edge, but only on land. In the water, the duck rules. So the chicken all day long, unless the duck can manage to take the fight to water. All I know is Kirk got the woman in that episode. Well, not really. The woman got Kirk. Chickens have sharp beaks and little teeth. So chicken, yeah. Chickens definitely have the edge as far as raw weapon. They also have chickens. Their talons are pretty sharp. So you don't want to, an angry rooster is actually something you don't want to mess with. So, fortunately, chickens are usually afraid of humans, but yeah, chickens have the weapons, but ducks have the aquatic ability. Ducks just have bills. Yes, but how many of us, get buried under a pile of bills? Get it? How you guys are doing now? This is just turning into matchup time. All right, let's do matchups then. John Constantine versus Ghost Rider. Well, Ghost Rider's primary ability is to burn the soul of anybody based on their fears. John Constantine really, well, I mean, I would say he has no fear, but he doesn't want to go to hell. So I would say Ghost Rider probably wins unless John Constantine can get a spell in before Ghost Rider gets a hold of him. Yeah. Ensign Rowe versus Tasha Yar. Oh, Rowe, hands down. Rowe has the B word factor on her side. While Tasha was a adequate security officer, I think, Rowe she's got it where it counts. Stan says, but not sure why. The two live action Shredders fight. Who wins? Shredder. Obviously, Shredder wins. I'll be completely honest with you. I know that's a cheat answer, but given that I don't give a crap about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that much, I only know the live action Shredder from the original movie, but I don't know what the Shredder that came later. Let's see. The car from Knight Rider versus the car from the 90s TV show Viper. Ooh, I'd have to look up I haven't seen Viper in forever. Knight Rider was my jam back in the day. But let's see. Viper is American Action Adventure Television, is outsourced Viper TV series. I don't think, did the car in Viper have any special abilities, or is it just a nice Viper? Let's see. Okay, so here we go. The car could transform into a heavily armored vehicle called the Defender. It allows the Defender to serve as an urban assault vehicle capable of police pursuits and capturing criminals. Well, I mean, because Kit obviously was made of a special magical alloy that could, was bulletproof and everything. I assumed that the Defender was bulletproof as well. Kit, of course, had turbo boost, but no real offensive capabilities. In some episodes, he was retrofitted with a laser, I think, to fight Carr, if I remember correctly. But Viper sounds like it was actually designed as an urban assault vehicle, so I'm going to probably have to give it to Viper as much as I'd rather give it to Kit. You should watch both There Will Be Blood and Gangs of New York. Okay. Viper had rockets, grappling hook, EMP pulse could turn into a hovercraft. Yeah, the rockets alone end the fight because Kit has no significant offensive capability. And an EMP pulse could shut down Kit. You'll never watch those movies. You're correct. I've not seen either of those movies. Trustin's taking off. Have a good one, buddy. All right. Anything else before I wrap it up here? I am in the process of working on the first video of my new series. And what I'm going to do is, as soon as it's ready, I'm going to put it up for Patreon. And if anybody wants to do a coffee repeating support, however you call it, subscription, I'll make it available to them as I'm working on the series. Once I have a few episodes in the can, then I'll start releasing them. Let's see. Helicopter from Blue Thunder versus Airwolf. Airwolf definitely wins the cool factor, but I'm trying to think. I mean, offensively, it's almost a toss-up. I don't know. They're both very maneuverable for helicopters. They're both. I think Blue Thunder is a little better in surveillance, and in fact, that was Roy Scheider's big issue with it, was because it was a violation of privacy to be able to spy on people through walls and stuff. But I think Airwolf probably wins in maneuverability, so I'll probably give it to Airwolf. Ooh, Mystery Project. Yes, it's one I've talked about before, but it's going to involve a whole lot of work. It's so far, at least that I can think of, it's going to involve reviews of about 10 episodes of Voyager, a couple episodes of Enterprise, about 5 or 6 episodes of the original series, about 5 or 6 episodes of TNG, and trying to line up all the different timelines, getting the dates right. It's gonna be a massive analysis of some stuff here. Are we done with the reviews on Section 31? You know what? Right now, I'll be honest with you, Lee, and I said this like earlier this week, I think. Nobody's watching the Section 31 reviews, so there's no point. And as much as I appreciate the people that do like them, if I put 6, 7, 8 hours into putting together one of those reviews and 30 people watch it, I'm never going to grow the channel that way. I've got to find things that people are more interested in. So I'm hoping with this new super secret project that I can get some people to watch it. Batman versus Jiu-Jitsu. Batman knows Jiu-Jitsu, so Batman. Have you ever had a chance to check out Chopper 1 yet? Yeah, I watched a couple episodes of it. I didn't watch the whole series. It was very cheesy. Return of the Jedi Ewoks versus the cartoon Ewoks. Well, I haven't seen a lot of the cartoon Ewoks. Now, the Return of the Jedi Ewoks did defeat the Stormtroopers, but then the Stormtroopers are the most inept military force in the history of history. So, I probably have to give it to the cartoon Ewoks. Yes, it was definitely very 70s. That's definitely a way to put it. It's like plot. We don't need a plot. We just have an excuse to put a cool helicopter in the air. Godson's taking off. Have a good one, buddy. All right, so I'll wrap it up there then, since it seems like we're about done. So, guys, thank you for putting up with me. I'm hoping that I'll be back to my old smiling self soon. But, man, it's been rough. I think I was trying to be Adam 12 in the air. Yeah, I think you're right. That's pretty close. You know, it's funny. I've never, because my parents, when I was a kid, T'Pring always knows when I'm getting ready to wrap up the show. She's got to hop up here and get all the attention. But when I was a kid, my parents didn't let me watch police shows in general. They felt they were too violent, and so I didn't get to watch a lot of the classics like Starsky and Hutch and stuff like that. And the wife and I just started watching Mission Impossible, and it's actually a pretty good little show. So we're watching some of that. We just watched all seven of the Tom Cruise films leading up to Dead Reckoning for this week, or Final Reckoning this week. Dead Reckoning was the last one. And yeah, I have to say, the Tom Cruise movies followed the formula from the old TV show pretty well. Considering I did even down to the way they do the credits. It's funny because CinemaSins, who I like to enjoy, CinemaSins, one of the things that he criticizes about the Mission Impossible films is that they constantly spoil the movie by showing stuff in the opening credits that happens late in the movie, which they do. If you watch any of the Mission Impossible movies, you'll see spoilers in the opening credits. And he says, and he keeps criticizing them for that. But they're actually they did that in the old TV show. I had no idea they did that in the old TV show, but they did indeed. So yeah, the OG SWAT series was good as well. I've heard the OG SWAT series was good, but for right now, one show at a time. Right now, the wife and I are watching Mission Impossible, and it's pretty good. I'm actually enjoying watching some of these old shows because, quite frankly, they don't suck as much as new shows do. They're not always trying to be edgy and pushing the boundaries of socially acceptable behavior and stuff like that, which I appreciate. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being wholesome every once in a while. I think that's one of my big problems with Andor. Remember when Star Wars was wholesome?